welcome to a not normally scheduled but long awaited stream. We have been batting this one around for a while with schedule conflicts and all sorts of... Ooh, my microphone is way over there. You probably could barely hear me. Not that that was something that a lot of people probably worried about, because I talk so loudly. How about a microphone? Oh, now it's in frame. Removing... Oh, stinky cheese emote. All right. Where is that from? Oh, it's global. Awesome. I'm totally going to steal... Can I copy that? Or is it just stinky cheese? Nice. Okay. Yeah, so that's the official emote of the stream. It's the stinky cheese emote. Welcome, everybody, to another adventure in history. I'm your host, Shane McInnes. And this is a specially scheduled and specially requested episode. Dude, tell me when you're going to go live. I'm going to go live 2 minutes ago. This was not necessarily... Oh, you had a good pun? Is it Blessed are the Cheesemakers? A cheesy pun? Well, I mean, lay it on us, KP. Don't tease us if you're not going to please us. So this is a special stream for the, I guess, fulfillment of a viewer request from a 10,000 point adventure point redemption. Several weeks ago, Graythar dropped the 10k points required to request a stream on the history of cheese. And then based on things like, well, you know, my birthday being in the middle of this thing, and then Graythar's work schedule switching around, we've been kind of moving things around a little bit, but today is finally the day for us to talk about Killer Rabbit. Oh. Yeah, I'm eating a piece of cheese in celebration. I shall appreciate its history as well as its tastiness. Jeez, let's go. Hey, Keenan45, how's it going? Hey, Too Far West. And hey, Graythar. Welcome. The guest of the hour. Yeah. History of cheese. So, again, the show itself is Adventures in History, where we talk about things that are historically related. We have viewer request episodes usually every other Tuesday. On Thursday, I do a chronological history lesson, discussion, free chat, pun fest, whatever. But it's in chronological or through history. So there's that. But if you save up 10k points, you can request streams. And fair warning, I have final say-so over that stuff, and... You know, don't throw out something silly like, you know, History of Toe Jam or something like that. But anyway, so this is History of Cheese. And, oh, there's another cheese emote. It's a hyper cheese, okay. I don't even know where all those Hyperscape emotes came from. I just kept getting them. I don't think I've ever used any of them. But anyway... so this is not normally the scheduled time or normally the scheduled point of the day, but anyway, we're going to do it, and I think we're going to have some fun talking about the history of cheese. As we're moving through, as always, please feel free to ask questions. If you want to throw some bad puns in there, those are very much welcome. Do not feel bad about derailing me from the topic. Side adventures are fun. Side quests, right? Before we go kill the boss, we can do some side quests and be way over leveled before we get there. I think it is a game, but I don't know what game it is. I was not paying too much attention to Twitch when they were doing all of that stuff. So, of course, you'll see Blessed are the Cheesemakers, which of course is one of my favorite Monty Python quotes. I don't know if you all are familiar with that movie, but if not, you should watch Life of Brian. It's very funny. It's a metaphor. Okay, so I had a long think when I first started prepping this stream as to exactly how one would go about making a history of cheese stream because it's not really something that necessarily has, like a country or set dates necessarily. It's more of a thing. Hey, that edgy boy 33, how's it going? Welcome. Feel free to ask questions. We're all friends. Do what you got to do. Opinion stinky cheese. So I guess what I came down to is that before we really even start talking about the history of cheese, we need to talk a little bit about how cheese is actually made. Because that's going to...
I'm Spartacus!
Oh,
I'm
Grethar.
Spartacus!
I am Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus!
Thanks for that sub, Grethar. Much appreciated, my friend. And now you're Spartacus. But we're all Spartacus. Are we, though? Who is Spartacus? Who actually thought of to get the milk and curdle it? Yeah. See, that's the thing. We need to kind of start with what actually goes on. So, I don't know how many people know how to make cheese. I mean, I know people know roughly how to make cheese, but it starts with this stuff. This nasty, rather gross-looking brown liquid called rennet. Woo! Rennet. Gotta love it. Rennet is a mix of several different enzymes. And it comes from the stomachs of animals that ruminate. And you go, what the devil is that? It's like where you chew cuds and then you swallow it and it kind of does a little bit and you kind of puke it back up and you chew a little bit more. Usually multi-chambered stomachs. So things like cows and sheep and goats. I use sour milk products as a starter. There we go. You make mozzarella but with lemon as a substitute for rennet. There you go. Rennet and Stinky. Oh, that would have been great. Ren and Stimpy. I get the pin there. That would have been a good one. I love Ren and Stimpy. I was not supposed to watch Ren and Stimpy when I was young because my parents thought it was horrible. And after I grew up, it is pretty horrible. And I can't believe that they let children watch that. Anyway, so there is a particular enzyme inside of rennet called chymosin that is the active ingredient that makes milk proteins kind of mush together. So when you take rennet and you add it to milk, the chymosin gets down into the milk proteins and it makes them clump, which is what separates your chunky part of the milk, which is called the curd, and the liquidy part of the milk, which is called the whey. And we're not talking about this is the whey. Oh, that should have been the title. It should have been This is the Whey. Oh, stink. That would have been so great, and I completely just overlooked that one. Dadgummit. That would have been a great title. Not too late to change. Yeah, I might actually do that. Let me get back over here. I do like Pennyroyal Brie though. I'm a Nirvana fan. Let me change this. I think This is the Way is better. I can't believe I missed that one while I was thinking up. If you can change and they can change, maybe you can change. Maybe we can all right, maybe we all can change. Anyway, so curds and whey, it looks like this. That's the break screen. This is curds and whey. This is in a modern cheese making process, and what you see here is we've added the rennet to the milk, and the chymosin is making all of the proteins in the milk clump together and form curds. And this is the liquidy part, which is the whey. Derry and I go way back. Hey, Life of Mama. This is an early stream. We had to rearrange some times so that some particular people could be here. So you add this stuff, it gets all clumpy, and then you scoop up the curds and you put them into something else. And this is where the different varieties of cheese start getting involved. But if we're talking about just like really ancient cheeses, you take these curds, and this is your unprocessed cheese, and usually you add stuff to it. And depending on where you are in the world, you have to add more stuff or less stuff. If you're in a really, really hot environment, throwing a lot of salt in there actually helps preserve the cheese, because otherwise, if you just leave it alone, it's going to spoil. Sometimes the curds get heated and you add other stuff into it that would make it taste differently. Now, modern day, people add stuff like particular bacteria strains, or they add particular other ingredients to the curds and then mush it all together. But what you end up with is mushing all of the way out, and then you have this solid block of curds. And depending on how long you let that sit there, it can get harder or not so hard. And in certain cases, you can rub stuff on the outside of the cheese to make a rind. And there are, again, dozens and dozens and dozens of different types of cheese, but there you go. What do they do with the liquid stuff? Just throw it away? Well, in the ancient time, you'd actually drink that stuff because it was still good to drink, and it had lots of nutrients in it. Today, it's used for several other things. You can take the whey off and process it into do other things. It's fascinating how many methods used originally just to preserve food have become evolved into delicacies. Right. Did someone say cheese? We did. They can recycle the whey in numerous ways. Right. Lactose intolerant people must look away. Oh, no, not lactose intolerant people. Whey can turn into ricotta. There we are. So you process it again and you get a further softer cheese out of that. You're lactose intolerant, but you're here anyway. Ricotta is a very soft cheese. It's good stuff, though. I quite like ricotta. So you leave this cheese alone and it ages. You can't always age it, depending on where you are in the world. Again, your geography matters a lot here. Heat is a limiting factor. The hotter the place it is, the faster you want to dry out your cheese, and the faster your cheese is going to spoil. The colder it is, or the cooler it is, you can keep it in certain atmospheres with high humidity or low humidity to get different outcomes. You can store it in certain locations and expose it to certain natural bacteria, which are going to change the flavor profile. The thing about these, and for those bacteria things, what I'm talking about here would be something like a blue cheese, where bacteria have settled into the cheese itself and eaten some of it and pooped out stuff to make a particularly different flavor complex. You're going to go lurk. Cool beans. But think about all of the available consistencies, ricotta up to solid Parmesan, right. And some people let flies lay eggs in the cheese, right. And you end up with maggot cheese, which is technically illegal everywhere, but people still make it. You have to know the right way to kind of ask for it. Can I get some of that cheese? Yeah, the cheese full of maggots, that stuff is, I don't know. People say it's lovely. I don't know if I want it though. People say a lot of stuff is really good, but I don't know. That's only down in southern Italy, yeah. So again, your temperature and your humidity and your location. The different types of bacteria live in different areas. There are some places where there are bacteria that live in these particular caves, and people have figured out that if you store your cheese in these caves, it's going to take a certain way, or taste a certain way, or come out a different way. This, of course, involves a very long trial and error process through thousands and thousands of years of human history. Today, there are cheese-making areas that have developed, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But yeah, in the ancient world, a lot of this stuff was kind of just figuring out wherever you could, right? you're not very adventurous when it comes to animal-based foods. Like, you'll try a fruit or vegetable or whatever, but if it involves animal products, you're much more wary. Yeah, I understand. You don't necessarily want to go like, what is this? Oh, it's cow brains. Like, I don't know if I could do cow brains. I know people love brains, but I'm not that far along the zombie process yet. So where you store it, what temperature you store it in, the humidity level that you store it in, the natural fauna and flora area that you store it in, all of these are going to have effects on what the cheese ends up tasting like. Prions, man. Yeah, exactly. See, that's the thing. Like, you get a prion and it doesn't go away. It starts making your proteins fold funny and then you die. So, cow brains are illegal. You can eat them in places in Europe. As a person who really likes cheeses, I'd still skip maggot cheese, also illegal for a good reason. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily probably very safe. I read a little bit about maggot cheese and thought about putting it in, but I don't know. You can't cook prions away either. Yeah, because, I mean, it's just kind of like a jacked up protein strand. Could you find some way to, like, denature the brains and, like, or would that destroy the food in a way that you wouldn't be able to eat it anymore? I don't know. Prions are bad news. You just don't want to mess with prions. Anyway, so there we go. So, okay, so how did we first figure this stuff out? Here's the question. Like, where did we first figure out cheese? So there's kind of a standard accepted idea on how this worked. And the idea is essentially somebody way back in history, and we do mean way, way, way back in early prehistoric times, killed an animal that gave rennet, so like a cow or a sheep or a goat, and then stored milk inside their stomach. And we know that this happens actually quite a bit. Stomachs and internal organs get turned into carrying cases or little ready-made Ziploc containers of the ancient world quite frequently. So someone stores milk inside of one of these stomachs and they walk around, which of course shakes up the contents, and the natural rennet that is stored in the lining of that stomach starts to curdle or starts to separate the curds from the whey. And then you get Jimmy to taste it. You go, hey, Jimmy, eat this and see if it's okay. And he's like, this tastes amazing. And then you have cheese. Oh, man, I've lost a lot of stuff. Okay, cooking denatures proteins. Things that scare me. 1, depths of the ocean. 2, heat death of the universe. 3, prions. Prions are already kind of denatured. Oh, that stinks. Eat meat. Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, exactly. Jimmy is in the middle of all of this. All kinds of proteins that they're all naturally jacked up. Yep. Hold on, you forgot your stomach purse. Oh. There's got to be some sort of like Louis Vuitton joke there where it's like stomach related or Prada. I don't know. There's some stomach related, purse related pun there. When you drink milk and lemon juice at the same time, yeah, but that implies a lot of different stuff. Hey, big crowds, I'm doing pretty well. How are you? We don't know how prions work their evil ways. Oh, super. They're horrible things. Okay, so here's the thing about this timeline. This probably did not happen before animals were domesticated. And there's a little bit of a logic to this. First off, if you are walking through the pre-domesticated animal world and you see a sheep, how are you going to milk that sheep? Okay, that sheep is wild, and that sheep is not going to be necessarily very happy if you like try to sneak up on it and just milk it real fast. That sheep is going to kick you in the face, right? So it really helps if these animals are domesticated, because sheep and goats and cows are going to be much easier milked if they are comfortable with human activity. Now, you could say, well, what if they killed the sheep and then recognized that it was a ewe and then milked it and then stored it? Yeah, it could happen, sure. But the frequency of that happening is probably a lot lower than what it would be if this was a domesticated animal situation. So in the law of big numbers, sure, before domestication, this scenario likely happened because we were around for 185,000 years before we started domesticating animals or so. So in that span of time, somebody did the milk in the stomach thing and came up with that. But the possibility of passing that knowledge on to somebody else and turning that into a habit that is adapted by all the subsequent people of the tribe, that's a lot larger hurdle to get over. You get what I'm saying? Milk and lemon juice, heat up, that causes protein to curdle. Right, I'm supposed to sleep, but this is just too interesting. I wonder. Why are you streaming on Sunday? So we have members of our online community that have work schedules that do not align with my normal streaming schedule. And in order to honor a viewer request episode for one of our community members, I made the schedule change a little bit because I have that power. I hold Imperium over my stream, so we're having one on Sunday in the middle of the day. But welcome, Jacob. You think it's called foreplay? I don't think you talk nice to the sheep and get milk from it. So when do we start domesticating these animals? This is going to be sort of our early thresholds of what we might consider actual repeatable cheese production. Sheep are domesticated somewhere about 10,000 BC. Goats and cows are about 8,000 BC. So we've had a long time of potential repeatable cheese making options. But then you go, okay, well, what do we when do we know that cheese happened? Do we have any sort of terminus antebellum date where we know for a fact that after this point we are definitely making cheese? Well, I'm glad you asked that, because I did some digging and I found some cool artifacts that I have pictures of. Well, I have a picture of. I've got some other pictures too, and we'll look at those. So let's look at an image. Again, curds and whey. This is what Little Miss Muffet was eating. Okay, gotta zoom out. Whoop. Come on. Go to the next picture. Don't be a jerk. Oh, too far. Here we are. So what we're looking at right here is a piece of a strainer. And this piece is kind of this piece, and you've seen that they have also discovered other pieces of this strainer. And this looks particularly useful for cheese making, because with these nice little holes, you can do stuff like, press whey out of curds. This particular strainer is 5400 BC, radiocarbon dated, and it comes from a place called Kujawi, Poland. And they even, after hypothesizing that this thing was a cheese strainer, went to a lab and did some testing on the material here, and it turns out that after analyzing the chemical nature of the remains of the strainer, that there was in fact dairy residue in the strainer. So this is cheese. We know that for certain by 5400 BC, people were making cheese. It's clear that they were making it before that, because you don't just make one of these strainer things out of, out of the thin air. You don't go, I bet I could. What I'm trying to say is that strainer that we found is likely not the first ever strainer that was ever made to strain out cheese. What probably happened is that they had a bowl or a pot or something with a crack in it and started using that, and then figured out, like, oh duh, if we put more holes in it, we could squeeze them out faster. So what we're looking at is actually a pretty evolved particular piece of physical culture here that is most likely the descendant of a proto cheese making tool. So again, this comes, I should be over here in Europe. So this is coming from over here in Poland. And it's important also to remember that the latitude of the location has a lot to do with the type of cheese. So up here in Northern Europe, you're going to have a lot more cheese making because the climate is more amenable to cheese production. You can just double click to zoom in and out or use the arrow keys. Yeah, but it doesn't always work when I'm doing that in OBS. OBS is a finicky little bugger. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. Hey, Bubba World, how's it going? Culture, cheese. Boom, boom. There we are, Vern. Hey, how's it going? So we know for a fact that from 5400 BC that there were strainers. Now, there were other, there have been other sites down in Southern Europe, especially around here on this coastline here in Croatia, that are about 1,000 years later that are also cheese strainers. The ones that were located in Croatia are actually much more evolved. I guess architecturally is not the word that I'm speaking of, or the right word for it, but the design of the strainers from Croatia that they discovered are much more ornate. I could not find pictures of those. I did find some descriptions of the artifacts, but no actual photos of them. I'm still kind of digging around a little bit. Finding photos for some of these ancient archaeological dig site things is not as easy as it might seem. So 74,000 or 7,400 years of cheese, at least, Flyina, at least. And welcome. So at least that much. Now you might be saying, okay, well that's physical, like constructive evidence, right? We have pots and things that are used for cheese production. But what about actual old cheese? And you might be surprised to find that I have located oldest archaeological evidence of actual cheeses. Still evident that in Nordic countries have much less lactose intolerance as it was, so beneficial to be able to drink milk and eat cheese. Most who couldn't. Right, and another thing is that there is a pretty big hypothesis amongst archaeologists and historians that cheese production was used as a form of baby food, because children who are breastfeeding are much less lactose intolerant, even if they grow up to be lactose intolerant. So creating a soft cheese that is mushy, that would be easily eaten by a baby without any teeth, could be a great way to get some nutrients for that baby. So you carry around some little mushy cheese for your kid, which makes some sense, right? We have soft baby foods today that are for children that are, designed to be storable, that can be portable, and that are good for people that can't chew things. So there's some evidence that early cheese production in places where lactose intolerance tends to be higher percentage of the populations, specifically for childcare. So there we go. The power of cheese and the stinky cheese emote. Yeah, I'm glad we found that stinky cheese emote. That's good stuff. Everybody has that one, by the way. It's stinky with a capital S, cheese with a capital C, but all in one word. So if you just type stinky cheese, all one word, you can do the stinky cheese emote. Okay, so let's look at some actual ancient cheese. Here's again our strainer. Okay. There we go. All the stinky cheese. So what we're looking at is a mummy. This mummy comes from a region of China called the Taklamakan Desert. Cheese intensifies. So the Taklamakan Desert is over in China, and I'm trying to show it to you right here on the map, but you're clearly not being able to see it because, well, you know, you are you're looking at the actual picture. But the region itself is called the Tarim Basin. But this guy is a mummy, and what we see here on this necklace going around his neck is actually little bits of ancient cheese. Yeah. And this person's burial chamber, once excavated, was dated to 1615 BC. So 1615 BC. Now, is Vern going to make me look dumb and just throw up this? Yeah, so I found those pictures right there, Vern, but the pictures that are on that particular that site right there, they don't actually say that what they're showing are the cheese strainers. So one thing that a lot of these websites, here, let me switch over to people because I'm talking. One thing that a lot of these websites that talk about history stuff will do is they'll find old pictures that look like it might be it. What I'm trying to do is actually locate photos from the published excavation reports. I like to try to make sure that the photos that I'm showing are definitely 100% certain the things that I'm talking about. But I appreciate that. And if you want to go look at that article about the Croatian stuff, there you go. It's a really good article. Child food thing explains the cute Croatian pottery. Yeah, okay. His last words was, "I wouldn't be caught dead in that hat." Oh, man. Don't bury me in that stupid friggin' hat. Handy snacks in the afterlife. Exactly. You get bored, you just go for it. Fun fact, vampires are lactose intolerant. I did not know that. Worst Cake Wars episode ever. Ancient version of the modern candy necklaces. Right. Okay. So you've got me tickled now. This is the Taklamakan Desert. Oh, I got to click on it so you can see it. This guy right here. This region, by the way, is called the Tarim Basin. Tarim, Tarim Basin. And it's actually really important for archaeology because it's kind of a crossroads of the ancient world. And the ancient Silk Road ran through here. You can see this geographically connects over here to Western China. And there's this neat little gap which pops out right over here in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Because everybody knows where all these countries are, right? But this area has a lot of really neat tombs that have been discovered, which is where this particular guy was dug up. So Taklamakan Desert, 1615 BC. But that's not all, because I have more pictures of old cheese. This is actually just a recent discovery. Not too long ago, they found this in Egypt. Oh, wow. That is a giant block of cheese. It's an ancient block of cheese, and I don't think anybody wants to eat that, but this is from the tomb of a guy named Tommy's. That's Pthames, Tommy's. And he was buried around 1200 BC in Egypt. He was a pretty rich guy, which is why he gets all of the good food stored with him in the afterlife. Yeah, the stands, exactly. So this is a big old honking block of ancient Egyptian cheese. Looks appetizing, right? Is it in pottery? Yes. So it's inside of this kind of pot. Jimmy, I bet you can't eat that. Oh, dude. constipated in the afterlife. So we've been making cheese a long time, and we found really old cheese, and we found remnants of the creation of really old cheese. If you want to do some more searches for images, there are actually quite a few tomb paintings from Egypt that that depict people making cheese. Egyptians were so great about just painting sort of everyday life scenes on the tombs of their rich people, which is a big bonus for us, of course, because now we get to see lots of stuff. So back, if you can remember, if you were with us when we were doing the history of metalworking stream, we know a lot about ancient Egyptian metalworking because they drew pictures of this on the walls of their tombs. So we also know a lot about Egyptian cheese making because of what they painted on their tombs. And they, of course, had cows that they had domesticated, and you can do some of this Googling stuff if you want to. So those are the oldest physical cheeses that we've discovered. What about written evidence of cheese? What's the oldest? What's the literary first appearance of cheese? Right, like the first appearance of this comic character is so and so issue. Well, the first written evidence of cheese that we have comes from a tablet that was excavated in the southern part of Mesopotamia. Over here, whoop 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 doop doop, right about here, and the tablet itself is written in Sumerian cuneiform, and it has a very big list of gifts that had been donated to the temple of Inanna. Inanna was one of the most important goddesses of the Mesopotamian world, and in that list we have cheese. So even back in 2031 BC, when this tablet comes from, cheese is considered good stuff because you don't give wimpy, dinky gifts to the goddess, especially one as important as Inanna. You give the good stuff. So cheese even then was good stuff. Sumerian mac and cheese. Sumer. Oh, good times. That was KRAFT for those of you that recognize the jingle. I don't know how many of you are old enough to have watched commercials that had the Kraft jingle. That includes me. So we have written evidence of cheese that's about 4,000 years old. We have physical evidence of cheese going back to 5,400. So that's, again, about 7,000 years plus of cheese making. And we know that it was around before that, probably as early as not too long after domestication efforts started back around 10,000. So cheese is actually pretty old. And here's the thing about it, though. For most of early human history, it doesn't really look like there were that many different types of cheese. So if we're looking at this ancient period of cheese making, it all sorts of looks like the same kind of thing. And if we are looking at this, it's all going to mostly be kind of in areas that are in this northern hemisphere up here. So there's kind of almost a line across the globe that sort of breaks cheese-making territory from not really cheese-making territory. And this is pretty evident throughout history. If you look at sub-Saharan Africa, the region of Africa that's down here, you don't see very much cheese making. If you look at Southeastern Asia and India, you don't see very much cheese making. Now, up here in India, there is some cheese making, but the popularity of that really doesn't kick off so much until Europeans show up. A cheese belt. That's what I was working towards. There's actually kind of a cheese belt on Earth. And if you start looking at the latitudes, this cheese belt runs kind of right around in here. And that's going to make a lot of sense when we get to this part of the United States right over in here, because this is still kind of the cheese belt in the United States, but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. If we look at North and South America in the ancient world, we don't see evidence of cheese making very much. There are a couple of documents that came from the Spanish when they were investigating down here in southeastern, or not southeastern, South America, goodness gracious, that said that the native people of Peru ate llama cheese, but we have found very little, in fact, no physical evidence of them actually eating llama cheese. Now, today they make llama cheese, but did they make it in the ancient world? That's a different story. I think there's a problem with using the globe for this because we all know that the world is flat. Well, it's flat like a wheel of cheese, right? Ancient discussions might have went, I'm so tired of goat cheese. I wish someone would diversify it. Maybe try cow's milk. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, that's right. So you have a few animals. You have goats and sheep and cows. And these are your domesticated ruminating animals. And you can make cheese out of that. But you don't hear people making cheese out of other animals, right? You don't hear like pig cheese. You could make any milk can be made into cheese, but it doesn't taste good usually. You haven't had llama cheese? I like pizza too. Crazy talk. Crazy talk. Gonna make goat cheese? Yeah. So for most of history, most of ancient history, you're really not going to see very different types of cheeses. This really doesn't start kicking off until around the Iron Age. So if we look at the period of the Iron Age, which starts around the 900s BC, you're going to start seeing cheese diversification. And this also comes with just a higher level of technology. It also comes with wider exploration of the world. And it turns out that there are other things that can affect the way that your cheese tastes. It turns out that if you feed your animals certain things, if you feed them certain types of grass, or if you feed them certain types of oats or certain types of grains, that it can affect the way that their milk tastes, which then affects the way that the cheese tastes. So by the time we get to a period around, the 500s or so BC, people have really started paying attention to this cheese thing. And especially by the time we get to Rome, the Romans are big cheese makers. They really like the different types of cheese, but they really still only have about 5 or 6 different kinds. Now, you can make this particular type of thing, like Parmesan cheese. Parmesan cheese is something that the Romans made a long time ago back in the Iron Age. And you can make Parmesan cheese traditionally the way that it's made, or you can use the same process with other animals, right? So you can use this cheese process with goats or sheep and cows, but there's only one right way to make it, but you can get some variety out of that. But by the time we get to the Romans, there are a couple of dozen types of cheese. And the Romans are really big in trading this stuff. They like to look around for new types of cheese, and it kind of becomes a regional thing. Have you ever tried to milk a pig? I haven't. What about human milk? Any milk can be used to make cheese. Anything that has a natural fat content can be used. Pig cheese always has a mud taste. Yeah, pig cheese probably wouldn't be kosher. No. So the Romans may have had chicken parm subs. I would suspect that over the course of the entire stretch of Roman history, somebody had a chicken parmesan sub sandwich. Whether or not that person turned that into Subway restaurant, I don't know, but I would bet that it happened at some point. Vegan milk? No, so vegan milk, it probably wouldn't work. Apparently pig milk is watery and gamey. That sounds horrible. Would love to know the people that figured that out. Yeah, vegan milk isn't actually milk. Stuff like almond milk and cashew milk and things like that. That's not actually milk. It needs the animal fat content. The animal fat and the proteins from the animal fat are what make the curds happen. You can apparently buy pig cheese. Okay. That's an adventure waiting to happen. Vern, is it expensive? Like if I ordered pig cheese off of Amazon, is this going to cost me like $45 or is like maybe like $5 or $6? I don't know. Like now I'm sort of interested. That's on the dark internet. That's on the dark web. You have the stuff. Yeah, I got like 5 bricks. Oh, the dark web. What if you make vegan milk with animal fat protein? Yeah, exactly. Fine dining lovers. World's most expensive cheese is made from pig. Okay, well, that's going to disqualify me. Anything with world's most expensive is right out. Pig's milk. Oh, man. Donkey cheese is a thing? Okay. Serbian Zasavica cheese is made from donkeys. There we are. But pig milk, oh man. $1,600 a pound for pig cheese. No, thank you. No, thank you, sir. Got to go on the dark web. So, the Romans are going to make a lot of impact when it comes to cheese production, but they're not going to have the variety of cheeses that we have today. They're going to have a couple of dozen types of cheeses. They're going to trade them across the world. They're also going to be responsible for spreading the love of cheese, because when Rome is conquering everything... Now, the Greeks had cheese and the Egyptians already had cheese. True, we've already talked about cheese being around. But the Romans' love of cheese is going to be a thing that actually helps cheese spread. But cheese spread, huh? But one of the things that happens as a result of Rome going everywhere, they moved their soldiers everywhere and they camped their soldiers all over the place. People want the comforts of home. They want that good European cheese. It doesn't matter if they're stationed in Mesopotamia or if they're stationed in Mauritania, right? You want that cheese. So they're bringing in a taste for cheese into the Mediterranean world, and they're pushing the boundaries of the types of cheese there that people like. But honestly, most cheeses are really going to come from about 500 years ago. And most of the cheeses that we know today that we think of as the cheese things are really going to be from the Renaissance. Oh, yes. And if you are familiar with any Renaissance painting, you see these all over the place. So here's a painting of some people in Europe making the cheese. Check it out. We've got the big old buckets full of curds and whey. We've got our strainers here. We've got a big old honking block of cheese, and Jimmy's over here in the corner tasting it to make sure that it's not poison. You're going to go now. It's 2 a.m. All right, Edgy Boy, have a good one. You wonder what elephant cheese looks like. Apparently humans can't digest elephant cheese. Okay. Tiger cheese, scary. Pot cheese? Ooh. Okay. Edgy Boy, Jimmy is the... Jimmy is a catch-all name. When somebody has to do something silly, or when somebody does something illogical, I always give that person the title Jimmy. Jimmy is the person that figures everything out through trial and error. So, like, are these berries poisonous? I don't know. Get Jimmy to eat them. Oh, Jimmy's dead now. Yeah, we shouldn't eat those berries. You've always wondered what time it is. I am in Central Standard Time. Right now it is 12:49 p.m. for me. Pot cheese is literally ricotta cheese because you make it in a pot. Ba-dum-bum, ba-dum-bum. I thought this was some sort of like THC laced cheese that would get you high. Maybe Jimmy was allergic. Where's Bob? Maybe so. From what you learned. Okay. I was not familiar with pot cheese, so I was going to let you have that one anyway. So we get our developments of regional types mostly during the Renaissance. And this is when you're going to have competition between all of these big cities in Europe. And this spills over not just into food, but into lots of things. So the Renaissance was full of competition from a lot of different countries. Everybody wanted the coolest stuff. Everybody wanted the fanciest art in their churches. Everybody wanted the biggest bridge. So we have these bridge building things where cities will build more and more elaborate bridges. We have bell tower competitions. There's a whole period of time in northern Italy where there are about 7 or 8 different big cities seeing who can build the tallest bell tower for a church. And they're doing this because, well, number one, the Renaissance has given them the knowledge to be able to do this stuff, but also, I mean, everybody has to compete, right? This is before we had organized sports like football, so one of the things that people did to compete was come up with regional cheeses. And this is why so many cheeses sound like they come from particular cities. And this is when a lot of the different types of cheeses that we know about today are going to show up. So stuff like your cheddar cheese and your Jack cheese and your Colby cheese, all of those are much newer. They're probably only about 500 or maybe 600 years old. Pot cheese gives you munchies for more cheese. All right, nerd sports. Right, we're going to have a cheese off. And we're going to see whose cheese is the best, and you throw cheeses at your enemy. Well, there are actually cheese festivals. There's a place in England, I believe, where they have this ridiculously steep hill. It might be in England or it might be in France. But one of the things that they do during this particular holiday is they will roll a wheel of cheese down this ridiculously steep hill, and people will run down the hill to try to catch the wheel of cheese. And if you catch the wheel of cheese, you get it. And you also get bragging rights. And if you don't, you end up with a broken neck and die. But, fun times pre-TV. They still do this, by the way. So the Mediterranean world is going to get there. The salt content of the cheese is going to be lower, depending on where you are in Europe. And especially during this time, you're going to start seeing a lot of the soft cheeses get perfected. So stuff like your blue cheese and your Limburger cheeses, the softer cheeses that also stink, like your blue cheese, those are going to be from further north in Europe. They require less salt content to keep them safe, which is why they can be more moist and soft and crumbly. When was the birth of the baby cheeses? It wasn't in December, and it definitely wasn't on the 25th of December. But that's for a different story. And during this period of time, you're actually going to start seeing a lot of people that get really wrapped up in this cheese pride thing. There are going to be competitions for cheeses. One of the things that happens when some of these European nobles start traveling around to conduct business with each other, you bring 2 things. You bring your local beverage and you bring some cheese. And this is what you give to your host, So, hey, I'm from Italy and I'm going to go talk to this French guy and maybe we can hammer out some sort of treaty between ourselves. Let me bring in some wine and some cheese. You ever wonder why wine and cheese go so well together? It's because it's kind of a traditional thing, and people start toying around with the recipes of both of them to make these great pairings. And you see this stuff hundreds of years ago that is today kind of a thing, right? You go to a restaurant, you get a cheese plate, and they say, this would go great with a so-and-so red with a full flavor. I don't know all the words. I don't drink wine. My wife would be much better at giving me the rundown of that stuff. She makes wine. Anyway, so there's also something else that goes on right after the Renaissance. A couple centuries after the Renaissance kind of moves around. Well, the Europeans start colonizing everywhere. They go to the New World. They go to Asia again. They go down into the southeastern corners of Asia. They go to the sub-Saharan part of Africa. They go to Australia. And what do they bring with them? Cheese. Also disease and gunpowder and death and flags, but also cheese. I'm reminded of the cheese that has port wine in it. Yes, there we are. So, I mean, even the infused cheeses, that'll get you a little... There's a buzz cheese for you. But with this colonization effort, the rest of the world really starts getting cheese kind of brought to them, literally brought to them. And because of this, you're going to start seeing a lot of other cultures bring up cheese. Was that a reference to Eddie Izzard's flags bit? That was. I love Eddie Izzard's flag bit. Do you have a flag? No? Yeah, Eddie Izzard is great. So the whole thing that I'm trying to push here is that the rest of the world was kind of behind on the cheese game until the Europeans started bringing cheese everywhere. And when they started bringing cheese everywhere, other people got on board, and you start seeing indigenous cheeses come up. You start seeing Central and Southern American peoples making cheeses. And so this, of course, it increases the variety. You bring different sorts of animals over. You have all sorts of these different things moving around. More variety means more variety of cheeses. The rest of the world is still behind. Yeah, I mean, Europe is still sort of the place for cheese. Europe is going to be the highest concentration of different types of cheeses. And part of that, again, goes back to Rome. These Romans were big on the cheese. And, of course, they controlled a large part of Europe. So the next big occurrence is going to be moving away from small batch local cheese production to what we would call industrial cheese production. And this is going to start in Switzerland. In 1815, some Swiss cheesemakers, let me throw the borders here. We can actually zoom in on Switzerland. There we are. Switzerland right here. So 1815, we see the world's first cheese factory, which is actually designated to produce cheese. It's not very big, but it does produce a lot of cheese, and the rest of the world starts kind of picking up on this. Like, hey, we can make big batches of cheese. Well, now that's interesting. How do you do that? Well, you have to sort of think about the right way of mixing things, and you have to get your recipes down, and you have to have large facilities around. But we're going to come up with mass production of rennet. And this is a big deal because at this point they did not have synthetic rennet. Now today we have synthetic rennet. Which is basically you can make rennet in a lab because of the fact we know so much about chemistry stuff now. You can just go make rennet, but they didn't know how to do that, back in time. We need more land masses in the southern hemisphere so we can have 2 cheese belts. we are not quite to Velveeta yet. We're working towards Velveeta. How sad is that? At the end of I just thought about that. The ultimate goal of this discussion is, what is cheese? What do we do with all these leftover cheeses? Eat them? I quite like cheese. Anyway, so the first the first assembly line cheese factory where they take the kind of American Industrial Revolution spin on cheese making is built in 1851 in New York. And I was actually able to find a photo of it, which I thought was kind of a lucky strike. Not Lucky Strike cigarette. This is a cheese factory, the first cheese factory that produced cheese in an assembly line fashion in upstate New York in 1851. And these are the big separator trays for your curds and your whey. You can see here that this guy's got a bit of a... this would be a paddle that you could move around to sort of encourage the clumps to clump faster. So there we go, 1851, upstate New York. But when you figure out how to mass produce rennet, this is going to make cheese production much more quick, because prior to this, you have to harvest the rennet naturally, which means that you have to kill an animal, a cow or a sheep or a goat, and you have to soak the stomach lining to get all of the rennet out. It's a slow process and it doesn't produce very much. But when you can make rennet in an industrial capacity, that changes the game, because now you don't have to be reliant on just the animal production of rennet, because once you kill that animal, guess what? It can't make rennet anymore, right? To get the rennet out, you have to get rid of the animal. But if you can make it, then the animal can continue to make milk, which you can, of course, then process into cheese. Paddle the seas of cheese, right? I bet that place smelled amazing. I bet it smelled like a wet poot. I bet it did not smell very good at all. And it's around this period of time in the 1860s that cheese production is going to shift from being a purely European thing to moving over here to the United States. And especially in the Midwestern states of the United States, right around in here. So these are the states of Ohio and Michigan and Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota. This region right in here, right around the Great Lakes, is going to be the American cheese belt. And there are a few things that sort of add to this, development historically. Number one, the climate of this area is very similar to the climate in Northern Europe. Two, this area is settled by a lot of Northern European people. So German people, Scandinavian people, Dutch people. These people, when they come over to America at that point in the 1800s, this is going to be sort of the Wild West. And this is where they're going to be able to find cheap land where they can make a living. So they're going to bring with them their own history of cheese making. They have this great climate that they find that is sort of leaning towards cheese making, and so they really go at it. Hello, you're from Argentina. How are you? Estoy bien. ¿Y tú? California has a campaign that claims their cheese is better because their cows are happier. Lies. Welcome, Kelly. I was actually hoping that you would show up today. I spent some time when I was researching this looking at the website of the National Historical Cheese Museum, which, if you could guess, is in Wisconsin. So there we are. But this region is going to be particularly positive for cheese production and is still some of the biggest cheese production areas in the world. And this is going to bring in the inventions of another guy. Let me go over here to the image and I'm going to show you this guy. And let me tell you, he's a real ladies' man. This is James Kraft. James Kraft is going to be an American dairy advocate, enthusiast. But he is going to come up with a new process to make cheese. Dun, 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 dun. Welcome, Jane Live, and thanks for the follow. Welcome to the adventure. what was the people were saying about pot cheese? You need to visit that place someday when you get to the U.S. Wisconsin post-pandemic trip is going to be awesome. National Railroad Museum, Cheese Fest, Sputnik Fest, Cheese Museum, fiberglass cows. It's going to be so mildly interesting. Amazingly mild. So James Kraft is an American entrepreneur, and he starts working on this process in the early 1900s that is going to revolutionize cheese production in America. And one of the things driving the forces, or one of the driving forces behind his development is actually World War One. When America joined World War One, one of the things that our soldiers wanted to eat was cheese. We're Americans. We eat cheese and lots of it, right? And the population centers of the United States in the early 1900s were much more centered in the eastern half of the country. The western half of the country was still being populated. We still didn't have 50 states at that point. So these eastern part of the United States are where our, Northern European immigrants are going to come from. So when these boys go off to fight, they want to bring their cheese with them. So here's the thing about cheese. Warfare is not kind to cheese. You've got to have something that's durable. You've got to have something that you can make fast, that's cheap. You've got to have something that will have a long shelf life, because you might put it in this soldier's pack and he might need to carry that cheese around for weeks without refrigeration. Here comes James K. Kraft, and he invents a process for homogenized and pasteurized cheese production. And this is what we call American cheese. So if you've ever seen a single piece of cheese between a little piece of plastic, or anything that you've seen on an American hamburger, or a big block of Velveeta, this is the sort of stuff that James K. Kraft comes up with. New York City had fiberglass cows for a while. Nice. Fry's cheese curds. Oh, I've had Fry's cheese curds before. Those are legit. Hello from Russia. You was a little scared. Oh, no. Come on in. Oh, crud. I forgot my greetings from Russia. Nostrovia is what you say when you drink. But I can't remember how to say hello and welcome. I try to learn things. Teach me how to say that. And I'll try to remember how to say welcome and hello in Russian. I try to greet people and speak to them in their language. You have to listen to me talk to English. I might as well be able to say something back to you in your native language. You want fried cheese curds? I would love some fried cheese curds right now. That would be awesome. They should just give the soldiers hard salami. They did. But what goes good with hard salami? Cheese. Do zadania is goodbye, isn't it? And I can't read Cyrillic. I'm sorry. I thought though that is not how it's spelled, but I think that's right. I thought dos vidania was good, like goodbye. I could be wrong though. So Kraft comes up with American cheese. This fixes so many problems and creates more. Ooh, what is that? Zdravstvuyte? Privet. Ah, there we are. Privet. Hello. Did I say it wrong? I probably said it wrong. I'm trying. I'll look it up. I actually have a friend that speaks Russian. I will consult my friend. But welcome, Jane. Feel free to talk, ask questions. Whatever makes you happy. No wonder all the Russians leave. I try. I just pronounce things badly. I don't speak it naturally. I can speak English, and I can speak Spanish, and I can get by in Latin, and I can do French, and Italian, but but I need to expand my linguistic acumen. Anyway, we're talking about cheese. So this is going to change the game because now you can mass produce cheese. You can also make these giant blocks of things that are called cheese. But here's the crazy thing about it. American cheese and the production of American cheese actually causes a lot of legal battles. And you might go, why would this cause legal battles? Well, here's the thing. There are arguments about what counts as cheese. And this gets into a lot of legal territory. And in America, the Food and Drug Administration has to get involved in this. But in Europe, there are actually, and I'm not joking right now, I'm saying this honestly, there are organized cheese cartels that try to monopolize cheese markets. And the definition of what counts as cheese is a big deal for these people. Because if they're going to make their money off of these traditionally made small batch artisanal cheeses, and here comes this American guy that's cranking out giant yellow jiggly blocks of stuff, that can't count the same, right? That doesn't equate. That stuff that those Americans are producing, that's not really cheese, is it? Your stepmom is Russian, born in Siberia, lived in Tajikistan. Interesting. Monopolized cheese. Yeah, they do. And the Swiss cheese cartel. I know this sounds like some bad goons from a kid's TV show, but the Swiss cheese cartels are really powerful. It's processed cheese food. Right. That's the thing. Like, is it actually cheese or is it cheese-ish or cheese-like? Your Belgian friend came to visit and yelled at me about how our bread is not bread and our cheese is not cheese. Are the cheese cartels from Mexico? I don't think so. I don't know. There might be a cheese cartel in Mexico. I know that there are some European people that are cheese producers that try to dominate the cheese market. Cheese adjacent. Cheese-ish. Right? But cheese is a big deal. And cheeses are expensive. There are people that really care about quality stuff. Cheese can get... We just discovered that pig cheese is worth $1,600 a pound. But... to really kind of hammer home exactly how valuable cheese is in other parts of the world for... I have a lot of American people in my chat. But in certain parts of the world that really value cheese, places like Italy and France, cheese is really, really big. What do you know about spray cheese? So that's the thing. And I actually kind of have a line here about that. The process of making... like the craft processed cheese allows you to make the cheese consistency change. So you can make something that's very, very dense, like a block of Velveeta, or you can make something that's floppy, like a Kraft single, or you can make it aerosol. And Easy Cheese or Cheese Whiz or whatever you want to call that stuff is really just spray paint cans blowing out cheese. It really just, that's what it is. Now, I love it, and it's horrible for me, but it's just aerosol cheese. Fun fact, Jarlsberg was known as Swiss cheese in Norway until Switzerland sued the dairy that made it. Only Emmentaler is Swiss cheese. See, there we go. There are people that will sue other places for calling their cheese names, because what counts as cheese and how you label your cheese is a big deal. Blowing out cheese. Well, some cheese can make you do that. I'm speaking too quickly. I apologize. I get excited and then I speak very rapidly. So, okay, where was I? Oh, expensive cheese. In my research for this stream, I found a particular bank in Italy that uses cheese as its collateral. And I have a photo. So if you go to this particular, well, that's James Kraft still. If you go to this particular bank, it's in Italy, they have 43,000 wheels of this particular type of cheese. It's called Parmigiano Reggiano. And each one of these cheese wheels is worth about 3,000 US dollars. So instead of having a big vault full of gold, they have this big underground climate controlled facility where they store these giant blocks of cheese. And that is the basis of the entire bank's operation. So you have lots of uses for cheese today. Is there a law against making cheese wheels? Not that I know of, but depending on where you are geographically, there are some rules that, like Joey mentioned, where you can't call your cheese certain things, or you have to make the cheese in a certain way or in a certain location for it to qualify as this type of cheese. For example, in France, there is a type of cheese that comes from these particular caves. And for it to qualify as this type of cheese, it has to be stored and aged in these particular caves because of the particular mix of bacteria in those caves. So as the cheese is aging, that bacteria affects the flavor profile of the cheese. And only those caves in France have those specific mixes. So if I made that particular cheese in America and tried to call it that, I would be in error. And they would probably come after me legally for saying that my cheese was their cheese. Cheese, the other gold. This is the cheese standard. I doubt that there is one in New York, at least. There is local cheese shop that makes big wheels of cheddar. Nice. The laws do protect many other things than cheese. Wine, bread. Sure, absolutely. Murray's Cheeses. Now you're making me want to go to New York again, Vern. France designates a lot of different locations where only a certain kind of food or wine can come from. Exactly. The U.S. doesn't honor those either, so you can make wine in the United States and call it champagne while it really isn't. Right. Exactly. Well, it probably should, but, America. There we go. Okay, so that was the history of cheese. And we went from carrying around curdled milk in a sheep's stomach to aerosol Velveeta. What are the laws? So there are a lot of food and drink regions, and this is much more in Europe than it is the United States, where certain techniques and certain types of grapes and certain types of milk and things of that nature have to be used to qualify as this particular brand. And there are rules and laws in Europe that prohibit people from sort of cheating and calling their product by this particular name. It's there are laws that protect particular companies, you make a law that says if you have a designated zone where this product comes from, and you make your product outside of that zone, you can't call it that. Oh, water laws, says America. Now I eat cheese. I see a lot of pasta labeled as macaroni product. There we are, right. French concepts of terroir. Yeah, the land over there. You gotta respect it. Your boundaries are important. You read that as the French concept of terror. Under Napoleon, they were pretty scary, and they did sack Rome in 390. So there we go. All right. So that wraps up what I had planned for the history of cheese. What about anybody else? Anybody have any other questions or comments or fun little nuggets of cheese wisdom that you want to share with us? Hope everybody enjoyed that one. I hope it was worth the wait. Time to go to Noms. Given what I know of the process for getting an AOC label, terror is appropriate. Oh, okay. Reign of Terror. Right. Mostly scary for people inside France, but sure. You feel like going to Murray's? That's Appellation Dorine Control, international keyboard. There we go. Cave cheddar sounds great. I wouldn't mind some. I'd like a really sharp cheddar. That's got a kick to it. That you eat it and it's got that nasal thing where you smell it really vividly. There aren't many cheeses that I don't like. I like soft cheeses. Oh man, one of the best things to me when I travel is breakfasts in Europe. European and Mediterranean region breakfasts are always loaded with cheeses. And you have choices. You have the really sharp cheeses, but you also have the soft cheeses. And I really like toast, just a piece of bread toasted with a really soft cheese on top of it. Oh, so tasty. Cheddar was great. Like it. For wines, they designate things like the label in your vineyard. Right. You like the funky cheeses? I like some smelly cheeses. I like a Gouda. It's not totally smelly, but I like blue cheese. Yeah. Is it time for cheese recommendations? Sure, go ahead. Throw some in there. Pecorino. Oh yeah, good stuff. What's your favorite cheese? Milk and cheese was a big part of Indo-European prosperity and hegemony. Grasslands, grazing sheep. Right. So there has been the Indus River civilization, the Harappans. They are over. Where am I? Come on, spin, Earth. These are people that live over here in the Indus River Valley, right around here. Those people had cheese production as well, but it wasn't quite to the level of the what am I trying to say here? I guess I need to pause and sort of collect my thoughts before I address this. The Indo-Europeans, the Harappans here, were much more culturally tied to people from the sort of Indo-Iranian steppe here and Mesopotamia than later Indian peoples. They had trade networks that stretched back over into Central and Western Asia. And once the Harappan civilization fell apart, there was still cheese production in especially this northern part of India up here, but it wasn't really a big staple part of their diet. And part of that is because of climate. It's very hot down there, but they're going to be similar enough that, you do have animals and herds and things like that. So you do see cheese production up here. And there was some archaeology done I believe over here in northern India just a few months ago, that found some pottery and did some chemical analysis of it and discovered some cheese making residue. So there is a Finnish cheese called, I'm not even going to try that. Yeah, I will. Lepiausto. That's fantastic. Bread cheese. Okay. I meant like the people just north of the Black Sea. Okay. Oh, yeah, over here? Oh, yeah. There we go. Lots of people there. Oh, yeah, and like the Polish right over here. This where that little cheese strainer that I showed you that was from 5400 BC came from. It's cheese that's pressed into blocks and then baked so it has a bubbly golden crust. Ooh, that sounds tasty. Best served with cream and cloudberries and heated on. Ooh, okay, now I'm getting really excited about this. Have you read The Horse, the Wheel, and Language? I have not read that. Should I? You just eat it straight. Flat pizza shaped things. You're making me salivate. Why is it called head cheese? Oh, that's a great question. Head cheese isn't actually cheese. It's more of a congealed meat product. And you take the head, usually of a pig, and you boil the head to get all of the fatty content and little bits of meat and muscle content off of the skull. And then you scrape it all together. And because you have boiled the bone, you get natural gelatin, natural collagen out of the bone. And you scrape all of that stuff together and you kind of strain off the liquid and you leave it to set. And it makes this kind of like, it's almost like Spam, but it's not as homogenized as Spam. It's more chunky. So you have some areas that are kind of jiggly and some areas that are more chewy. But if it's done right, good stuff. No mention of fondue. Fondue is actually something, one of my friends, Mac in a Lab Coat, one of the mods here in the channel, linked me an article about how one of these Swiss cheese cartels or cheese making organizations basically created fondue as a way to sell more cheese. So they bought all of these sort of publication rights to stuff and started pushing all of these products, and they pushed this idea that you need to do this stuff because this was how they were going to move more cheese. And basically they created fondue as a marketing gimmick to sell more cheese. And because they were throwing so much money behind the promotion of fondue, it caught on, and then it just went like gangbusters. I lived through the 80s too, Vern. I'm going to have to look at this now. Oh, that does look tasty. Oh, man. I'm hungry. Oh, that looks good. I've never had cloudberries before, too. That looks delicious. Mm-mm-mm. You're so hungry. Lingonberry. I have had lingonberries. That's almost an aspect of meat and possibly else. Okay. World Cheese Organization. Right. The New World Order. There's a fondue place right around the corner. And then there's moon cheese. Right. The moon's made out of cheese. So. When I was growing up as a child, one of my treats was a can of spray cheese and Ritz crackers. And I know this is not anywhere in the same world or anywhere as developed of a taste as the particular stuff that you all have been sharing. But man, I could eat Ritz crackers and Easy Cheese like crazy. You somehow missed cloudberries when you were in Sweden? Frantically Googling for a place to find that they use them locally. Dehydrated cheeses, nice. Soft cheese for me. Greensward. Cheesy Boy Bob. Hey, there we go. Welcome. Oh, yeah, that looks so good, Vern. That's the kind of stuff that I want to put on toast. Oh, yes. That looks amazing. With that rind on it. Oh. Billy Onicle, the cheese god. I still frequently eat homemade Lunchables, which is whatever sliced cheese and deli meat. Yes, exactly. I could tear that stuff up too, man. All right, everybody. Does anybody have any sort of point redemption that they want to do? If you look below you in the chat, you'll see a little picture of the adventure hat, and beside that, you will be able to view the number of adventure points that you have. You can redeem those for a wide variety of things, not just the sort of typical Twitch standard point things. So if you would like to go ahead and see what you would like to redeem, we are currently going to probably wrap up here in just a second. See who might be around for us to raid. I only see one person that I follow that's currently online. That's fine. We'll go raid Neo Realms and see what's going on over in his world. Rank 3 things: Swiss cheese, cheddar cheese, and brie. Now I'm hungry, and I'm going to have to think about that. Okay, so it depends on what time of the day it is, because if it's a morning thing, brie has got to be number one. If it's on a sandwich or during the day, or if I'm just eating cheese, cheddar's got to be number one. So in the morning, I like my soft cheeses. It's kind of my thing. And I've been spoiled again by traveling around and looking at European breakfast and Mediterranean breakfast where they have the soft cheeses. That has spoiled me. So I like the soft cheeses in the morning. So if we're talking about in the morning, I'm going to have to go brie, Swiss, cheddar. But it's flipped around if it's during the day. So if it's past the point where I'm going to have coffee, so if it's brunch or after, cheddar's got to go first, then Swiss, and then brie. I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to have to stick with that. So it depends on the time of the day. Oh, here we go, Joey. 10,000 points for History of the Norse People in America. Oh, that's going to be a fun one. I will probably back that up a little bit to do a little bit of a more kind of targeted thing about Norse exploration. What we know about the Norse people specifically in America is probably not going to be enough to wrap up an entire lesson. Oh, wow. What is this? Bookmark. We're all going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones. Most people are never going to die because they're never going to be born. The potential people who could have been here in my place but will in fact never see the light of day outnumber the standing grains of Arabia. Certainly these unborn ghosts include greater poets. Interesting viewpoint, Z2 Spring. A bit existentialist, but cool beans. So, Joey, with your blessing, I'd like to expand that just a little bit, and we'll definitely talk about the Viking settlements and the Norse people in the New World as a sort of a kind of an apex. But if I could back that out a little bit and zoom it out to Norse exploration of the North Atlantic and talk about Iceland and Greenland and how they got there along the way, I think that would probably be able to be a little bit more of a broad episode. Otherwise, it would probably only be about 25 or 30 minutes long because we we've done some excavation work, but we don't really know too terribly much about it overall. But I'd be happy to do that. I'll wait a bit with your next viewer request. Maybe we could do a water topic of food preservation. Maybe I'd have to talk about that one with you a little bit. I'm losing chat. I'm glad to have been able to catch another stream. Hopefully, as we head into November, you can schedule for some more. Oh yeah, welcome. Superb. You don't feel bad about not being able to make streams, my friend. You make it when you can. Life is very fast for everybody right now. Don't ever feel bad about not being able to make it. Brittany, if New York City becomes a thing, I will try to do Murray. Aw, Vern, you're a nice guy. Complete history of all food things. That might be a bit too much. Wait and see how the negotiations go, and if you still have a job in a couple months. Oh yeah, I heard about that on David's channel, Grethar. I hope everything works out as best as it possibly can for you, my friend. That's a mess. Absolutely cool. I have to remind me, memory's bad. Food is going to wide topic. There are more Norwegian people living in the United States than there are Norwegians living in Norway presently. Oh wow. Oh, okay. So even if we expanded that, Joey, we might need to chat a little bit on the Discord and get a little bit of a wider scope, because if you're talking about later people that came over here during like the colonization of America, we could expand that. Let me throw up the Discord link. Boop. If you're not already and you would like to join the Discord, please do so. We mostly share memes, and I occasionally share historical articles that I find in my daily perusings. You can get notifications about when I'm going to go live there. If you're not already following, click the little follow button. Otherwise, sucks if it happens, but you'll be fine. The only real change would be that I have less money to spend, but I still have money to spend. Well, even so, that's even if you know that you'll ultimately be okay, that's still a stressful thing. Anytime you start having to deal with but like job changes and stuff like that, I know that can be stressful, and I wish the best for you. Now that I know it exists, you'll be on the lookout for it. Yes, we'll have to look for bread cheese. That's, I don't know if we can get cloudberry stuff, but that's on the list. That is making all of this stuff like go crazy right now. I'm actually really, really hungry right now. I sort of expected myself to be a little hungry, but like this is pretty bad. So, all right, we're gonna go raid Neo Realms. The only person right now that I know that is a streamer that I follow that's online. He is an art teacher. He teaches high school art. He's usually working on building stuff for a video game that he's making with some of his friends. He does all the original art for it. He's been recently designing things in 3D for he got a 3D printer, and he's been in the last couple of streams designing things for a 3D printer. He's got this whole fantasy world that he's built, and right now he's actually painting a model of one of his 3D printed tanks. So we're going to go say hey to Neo Realms, Mr. King. Throw him a follow if you're so inclined. Our battle cry, as always, is adventure. Joey, I know that Jim Lee's there, but just to be honest, I don't think Jim Lee needs my 14 viewers right now. He's got thousands. So I try to spread the love to people that are in my same world. I want to make sure that everybody can see everybody else. So we're going to go raid Mr. King. We'll give him the adventure. We'll throw the adventure hats if you got them. Otherwise, ladies and gents, thank you all so much for attending. I hope you all have had a good one. Our next scheduled stream is on Thursday. We will be talking about Alexander the Great and his conquest of the known world. It's going down. Yeah, Calm Heart, the numbers, like right now it's telling me 12. The numbers change. But we're going to go raid Neo Realms. So I will see everybody on Thursday. I'm going to click this little raidy raid button. Hope everybody has a good one. And I will see you around next time. Take it easy.